It is great to be joined today by David Wu, who is the founder of TAUcoin, which is a very, very interesting new project that we're going to be talking about today. David, first of all, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, David. I'm very happy to be here.
So let's start just with the basics. In the crypto space, we have become familiar with the terms proof of work and proof of stake. These are two methods by which many cryptos sort of operate on platforms. Can you talk to us a little bit about the problems you've identified with those mechanisms?
Sure, thank you. So it looks like POW and POS become the major two mainstream consensus mechanisms out there. However, if we really look into it, we feel some inconvenience. For example, in the POW world, let's say this planet is called POW. So when we go to this planet, we found out there are so many arm race on hardware. You even demonstrate your power of computing, or your power of space, or your power of the whatever the arm race happening. So with that, we think there's a very prone to something called a superpower attack. For example, one day a Bitcoin hitting the Bitcoin market hitting $2 trillion US. There might be some G20 government feel it's not convenient to have that. So they may be putting together a huge amount of hardware trying to confuse the network to prevent the network to going forward. On the other side, for example, in the POS, if we look at that planet, we'll find out in that planet, it's really rich people dominate the economy. So we know the consensus is the most critical part of the blockchain. It's like a constitution. In different constitution will basically give you a different economy and the different benefits for people. So Tau basically is a new, novel consensus mechanism. It's also a technology venture into this uncharted consensus planet called proof of transaction.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about how that works. And I think that we like to think that the crypto space provides these sort of egalitarian and democratic mechanisms. But when you really look at it, when you look at proof of stake, well, it's basically how much stake can you buy, which doesn't actually sound that egalitarian. When you look at proof of work, it's often based on how much hardware power can you buy, which sort of presents the same problem. So right. Given that we now understand that, talk a little bit about the new consensus mechanism that Tau is developing.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting topic. If we observe people's daily behavior, what's the most pervasive behavior that is more equal to each other? It's actually the day-to-day transaction. They buy pizza, they buy coffee. So those are most pervasive fair things. People don't really buy mining rigs every day. People don't really buy the property every day. So rather than using the big purchasing item on the hardware and the property, we think if we switch the consensus, allow people using their daily behavior to protect that. Also, on the other hand, if you look at the blockchain, open up a block, the majority information in the block is actually a transaction data. So what if we can use the majority of the blockchain information and also people's daily behavior, which is also transaction, to protect the network security and also driving the blockchain forward? That would be very ideal.
So is it correct to say that your consensus mechanism is built on the basis of the number of transactions that users are engaging in?
Correct. Generally, we're counting the probability of the miner to getting next block is the number of the transaction you accumulated, not only by you, but also by this concept called a mining club. But we're not only counting about the numbers, because there might be SIBO attack if we will just do the numbers. So we're also counting about the transaction value. So it's a combination of the transaction number and transaction value to protecting network security.
Now, couldn't people create a whole bunch of transactions, not fake transactions per se, but basically meaningless transactions, merely to sort of game the consensus mechanism that's based on the number of transactions? Is that a concern?
This is actually not only concern, but always the area that we focus on to remove from, because there are enough speculation on the blockchain world trying to make more money by mining. For example, in the POW, you see people actually building this special machine to do that. So we're expecting people to do the same thing to creating more meaningless transaction. So, however, we have this mechanism, which is something called a clipping reward, and also a counting the value of the transaction fee to basically make the future profit for such behavior equal to zero. So there's a very sophisticated program to set up to reduce that. But The goal is to make the speculation profit approaching to zero to eliminate this something called a SIBO attack.
One of the concerns that exists, particularly with Bitcoin, but also with some other blockchains, is a huge environmental concern. And there have been estimates made of the amount of electricity in total that Bitcoin mining might consume if it keeps on the same path for the next 2, 3, or 4 years. I know that for TAUcoin, this is something that's a concern of yours. How are you dealing with the environmental concerns around blockchains and mining?
Yes. Very similar to POS, Tau is a very clean consensus protocol. We're not relying on the arm race of the hardware or resource to generating the security. So there's some theory talk about, okay, you have to waste something in the real world to create a cleanness and security on the virtual world. We don't believe that. So basically, we're using the people's daily behavior, which is essential behavior. You can also consider that people consume energy by paying things on the real world to protecting the virtual world network security. So we're very clean. There's no environmental concern in our consensus model.
That's interesting. So there's this idea, I mean, it almost goes back to like the basic discussions of how economics works, right? Like the idea of surplus value, going all the way back to Marx, right? Which is you start with some raw materials and you add labor to it, and that creates something of more value. So there's this idea within mining that there has to be some real world cost to what you're doing, because otherwise you really are creating value from nothing. So explain why you don't believe that that's the case.
I think we human beings actually pushing forward the technology, make a lot of the previous assumption become not really true. For example, right now, we can using electricity to fly, to drive. And before, the electricity is very very difficult concept to understand. Now we're in the digital age. So in the digital age, we have the capability to approaching the truth, which is the network security on the blockchain, much easier comparing to you have to waste some real world electricity. So by using the digital abundance on the network, we're able to achieve that. This is something that beyond the previous imagination by Marx.
Is the idea that you have to compete directly with Bitcoin or Ethereum as a currency, or are you kind of developing something that is separate from that?
Bitcoin, Ethereum, US are great cryptocurrency. I love it. They give me a lot of enlightenment. However, so we define our as a novel currency. We want to focus on three major things. So one is we like to see the circulation, which Bitcoin does not have. Second, we like to see there's anonymous transaction that can protect everyone's wealth, which many other cryptocurrencies do not have. And thirdly, we want to see there's no inflation. No inflation is very critical because in many parts of this world, people are being took advantage by the inflation, taking their money away from them. So we want to create this novel cryptocurrency, be able to encourage circulation, no inflation, and anonymous. So this is what a POT is superly capable of. I also believe POT, proof of transaction, will be the future consensus in 20, 30 years, become the dominant consensus protocol in the cryptocurrency.
Let's assume it is, for example. What would be some of the social and political implications of that?
First of all, is the ultimate security of the currency by people. Why do I say that? As I mentioned, that if the currency hitting, say, 10 trillion US dollar, for example, there are big countries don't like it. So it's really difficult for POW to resist a G20 attack because G20 can use a nuclear power plant and running with the rigs to confuse the network. And also G20 have enormous financial wealth or the military wealth to be able to secure the DPoS candidates. But the POT, which is a pervasive behavior among all people, there's no way you can control a majority of the population on the planet. So this actually, first of all, this provide a very good security in the future.
Okay, so let's talk about that first because that's very interesting, and I want to make sure our audience understands that. So right now, with some of the consensus mechanisms that exist in cryptocurrency, if the G20 countries decided, hey, listen, this is real, this is happening, there's mass adoption, we want to exert control or influence over how these cryptocurrencies are functioning, they would be able to do that because of the technological power that those 20 countries together have. What you're suggesting is that the consensus mechanism of proof of transaction would not be able to be hijacked by governments or individual big players.
I believe that's correct. It's our vision. We're working hard to achieve that. And it's theoretically it's theoretically definitely a possibility to
Okay.
do that.
And then you were going on, I interrupted you because I wanted to clarify, but you were going to tell us the next sort of socio-political impact.
Yes.
You go ahead.
Okay. So the second one is the circulation. Because in this world, we already have many securities and also the assets for people to hoarding money, right? Diamonds, golds, properties in Hong Kong. So we don't need a second way to storage the wealth. So we really need a pervasive circulation of a new cryptocurrency. So the way TAUcoin Foundation doing is that we provide this thing called the bounty program. And this is going to lasting for like 10, 20 years to be able to allow people to claim and work a little bit to getting this coin. So as opposed today in the BTC and Ethereum, you have to be the miner, and the cost of doing miner is very, very high. So which actually make many people not able to access the BTC and Ethereum. So we actually, through proof of transaction algorithm, will be able to basically mint 10 billion tokens in the Genesis block, and our foundation is committed to distributing those tokens to the world, to the people on the planet.
That sounds great, but how will TAUcoin make money for itself?
Okay, so let me say making money is very important for TAU Foundation to support our programming and PR moving forward. So the way we're looking making money is not from profit, not from speculation, but by holding our tokens by ourselves. And once we see there are more people hold it, there are more circulation and more consensus on POT, and the token value will increase. Then eventually, a TAU token become a cryptocurrency. We can use that pay for people and keep our lights on.
Give us a little bit of a sense of the ICO. So whenever I talk to people that are doing a project, we talk about the project first. The project is often very interesting, as is the case with yours, and then we get to why do you need to ICO? Why is the ICO crucial to what you're doing?
Okay, first of all, important, we need some money to support the foundation moving forward. Second is we think distribution of TAU, in terms of distribution, ICO is a very effective way. And also we want to do ICO for a very long time rather than a few months. So here's the way we do ICO. So every day we're going to put together 1 million TAU on the network for sale, starting with price 0. For example, if you put in like one Ethereum, nobody competes, you can get all 1 million TAU. However, there's competition. So every day 1 million, it's like EOS style. We put there and people come in auction, and every day 1 million will basically can last for in our reservation basically can last for 20 years. So through that long time process, we want to get a TAU distributed through the ICO. And also ICO is a very good. Thirdly, ICO is a very good way to build up the community, get people pay attention to the development of the TAU.
When does the ICO start, and what are the stages?
We're targeting on October 15. Prior to that, October 19, we plan to turn on our mainnet. So this ICO is not an ERC20 token sale. It's a mainnet natural token sale on our main blockchain.
And then as far as the roadmap, how long do you expect that to run? And then what are some of the other important milestones?
So because the way we do that is daily, very minimum volume put into the market. So this can last very long. So mathematically, this can last for almost 20 years. But however, once we found out there's equilibrium between TAUcoin with other major cryptocurrency, for example, BTC and Ethereum, we probably will stop right there because there's no meaning for you exchange to liquidable currency back forth. So I guess probably in 3 to 5 years, we can achieve equilibrium between TAU and to the Bitcoin. Then we'll see there's more stronger momentum on TAU. Then probably the ICO will end up over there.
If people are interested, they can find out more at TAUcoin.io. That is TAUcoin.io. I've been speaking with David Wu, who is the founder of TAUcoin. David, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much, David.